Our journey today will take you in the footsteps of the most notorious dictator of all time to find out how he managed to make a country sink in crisis, facing enemies on all sides. An army that has created terror for every superpower up to the present, and possibly forever after, until human civilization fades away. But before we can discover this secret, we invite you to go back into history. Back in 1919, before your eyes is a moment of the signing of the Versailles Peace Treaty, where the most powerful men in the world, representing the victorious countries, wanted to impose an uncompromising punishment on the defeated general, namely the Austro-Hungarian and German empires. As for Germany, this empire was limited in armament to a minimum level, only retaining 100,000 infantry with conventional weapons, no air force or navy, and war industrial facilities were destroyed, abandoned, and had to pay war compensation to the winning countries. Germany lost 1/8 of land, nearly 1/2 of population, 1/3 of iron mines, nearly 1/3 of coal mines, 2/5 of iron production, nearly 1/3 of steel production, and nearly 1/7 of cultivated area farming. The burden of the peace agreement did not fall on the shoulders of the ruling class, but mainly fell on the backs of the workers. Stepping into this country's territory, it seems that every citizen is cursing this peace treaty. They regret the years 1871, the glorious period of the German Empire basking in glory. Today, Germany's honor is buried in the grave. Never forgive it. There will be revenge for the humiliation of 1919. Germany at this time, also known by another name, the Weimar Republic, was facing all sorts of serious problems. The economy was in ruins, famine was widespread, and wounded and disabled soldiers were scattered around every street corner. Friedrich Ebert, the president of this republic, also saw that. He believes that a moderate leadership approach will be the remedy to help the country overcome the crisis. However, radical left-wing organizations saw Ebert as an enemy. The reason is because he worked with the old elites in the military and bureaucracy to establish democracy. Other extremist elements accused him of betraying the labor movement. Even though he made great efforts to suppress the rebellion and overcome the crisis, the economy of the Weimar Republic at that time faced many difficulties and had to pay for debt to the victorious countries in World War I. Even while the president was busy with paperwork in his office, on the far corner of the street, there was a veteran of the German Imperial Army who seemed to be eager to post a status line expressing his angry indignation on his personal page. There is no way an empire can be defeated even if its soldiers are still present in enemy territory. His full name is Adolf Hitler, the main character in today's video. Of course, like any extremist, he seemed to have deliberately ignored the fact that, at that time, the fascists had exhausted all war potential. But anyway, the past cannot be undone, the future is what needs to be looked forward to. After a period of demobilization and experiencing many events, he joined the German Workers' Party. In 1928, Hitler and his accomplices, with the help of former German Imperial General Erich Ludendorff, launched a coup known as the Beerhouse Putsch. However, this coup failed. Hitler was arrested and imprisoned for 9 months, but in reality, Hitler was released after less than 1 month in prison. In 1929, taking advantage of the world economic crisis and widespread poverty in Germany, Hitler, with his eloquence, helped the Nazi Party come to power and officially become a dictator. In 1932, after the federal election, the Nazis became the largest political party in parliament. On January 30, 1933, Hitler was elected Chancellor of Germany. The Weimar Republic government collapsed. Obviously, everything would end here if he just sat there peacefully and sought to get rich through bribery, speculation, and profiteering. Hitler had greater ambitions than that. He wanted to build the greatest empire of the German people and to realize that ambition, building a powerful army, would be the first prerequisite. But if Germany complies with the limits of the Versailles Peace, at best it can only build an army capable of defending itself, or at most it can attack small countries or wage local wars with great powers. Therefore, Hitler needs to abandon this damn treaty, but everything will have to be done extremely tactfully, avoiding angering the US and UK. One is an emerging power, the other is an old empire, barren, but still very powerful with a huge colonial system. At the Lausanne Conference in June and July 1932, which took place very peacefully, Germany succeeded in canceling military restrictions, whereby the country's compensation amount was only 3 billion marks to be paid in 37 years after a period of stopping payments. In the next 3 years, at the Geneva Conference on Disarmament in October 1933, under British pressure, the conference passed a decision to recognize Germany's equal right to armaments as other countries but must control, while the German side wants immediate equality. Unable to meet the requirements, on October 14, 1932, Germany left the conference and 3 days later withdrew from the League of Nations. On June 18, 1935, Britain signed a naval agreement with Germany allowing Germany to build a fleet of surface ships and submarines. This agreement directly violated the Versailles Peace Treaty and further strengthened Germany's position in the international arena. So the barriers imposed by the Versailles Agreement on Germany's defense potential were systematically torn to pieces, from this event to the decisions to sign a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union and territorial claims with Western countries. We can see that in terms of foreign affairs, the Nazi regime did much better than the German imperial dynasty during the reign of Emperor Wilhelm II. Thanks to which the German army had the conditions to rampage battlefield instead of being nipped in the bud. For now, let's review what are the necessary elements to build an effective, powerful, comprehensive expeditionary army capable of forcing any enemy to pay a heavy price. The first prerequisite, also the thing that few people pay attention to when talking about a national army, is a strong rear base. That's because if a war is launched, Germany, with empty terrain and surrounded by potential opponents, will obviously not be able to count on any outside aid, whether just a suitcase thanks to Code 104. If he wanted to maintain the fighting power of his army, Hitler obviously had to build a strong domestic economy and advance production. Fortunately for the German dictatorship, the factory system and industrial infrastructure from the German imperial era were still preserved after World War I. And the Weimar government had not yet had time to clear the land for the Stadium Golf up there. Hitler came from a commoner background and was not trained through any formal economic or political school. But through personal experience, he also realized for himself that the country cannot rely on elements who sit in closed rooms to make empty theories, talk a lot, and do little, and still have illusions of power. Instead, this dictator believes that only people who have experienced working directly can perform all tasks in the most effective and pragmatic way. He desires to exploit as much as possible all available potential, and in the empire that is being built, there will be no people who do less to enjoy more, including those with congenital defects or who have passed the certificate, receive psychiatry. In a speech, Hitler bluntly declared, "What we want is to re-educate the German people by forcing everyone to work as an obligation." Every German, whether rich or poor, coming from a family of intellectuals or the working class, will have to participate in manual labor at least once in their life so that they can learn how to command better because they have learned to be able to obey orders. Hitler proposed compulsory labor for male citizens, comprehensive agricultural reform, lower interest rates, and relaxation of union wages to promote industrial growth and new jobs. So the rear economic problem has been temporarily resolved. Now coming to the second problem, which is how to make every soldier from a country that has just suffered a humiliating defeat ready to fight even when before them are rows and rows of resistance, courageous soldiers. Obviously, with the culture and general level of the German people at that time, Hitler would not have been able to force people to send their husbands and children to war to fight fanatically based on belief in supernatural gods like that Japanese fascists or jihadist groups did. He chose a new ideology expressed right in his autobiography. This dictator completely rejects the notion that all people are created equal or any moral idea, but rather defines high and low levels based on intelligence, strength, and the desire to dominate the universe. This difference does not just stop at individuals, but rather attributes the characteristics of each ethnic group to certain characteristics of discrete groups. I would like to quote a few of Hitler's catchphrases that smell strongly of national prejudice, which are, "Indian nationalists often surprise me because they stammer out theories from heaven and earth, without the slightest bit of ability or reality." Or, "I am disgusted by the sight of mixed people crowding capitals like Czechoslovakia, Poland, Hungary, Czechs, and Croats. I am disgusted by the Jewish parasites of humanity that are everywhere present in the book Mein Kampf, My Life of Struggle." He also asserted that the Aryans were associated with human civilization, and their extinction or degradation caused this earth to sink deeper into the darkness of the uncultured era. In addition to using chauvinism to incite nationalist sentiment among the people to extreme levels, Hitler also established the Hitler Youth Organization. The obedient, resigned teenagers were subjected to training, including brainwashing to train them to become future soldiers. He understands that children easily feel lonely and are easily turned into tools. Hitler kept these teenagers busy in the organization to dispel the children's feelings of loneliness. When a protester said, "I would not be on your side," Hitler calmly replied, "Your children already belong to us. Your next generation is already on our side. Soon they will know nothing else but this new faction of theirs." Regarding the cause of the country's disastrous situation, his country blamed the Jews and at the same time imposed blindly extreme nationalist ideology from there. Infect the current and future classes of soldiers and officers with reactionary views. They must carry out the mission of conquering the territory, gaining survival space for the nation, for what the dictator calls the next step of human civilization. On that dark path, Germany will either be a world power or nothing. So the problem of economic logistics and national spirit has basically been solved. But anyway, in a war, the fighting strength of soldiers and officers is the direct factor that creates victory. To be able to create a true Third Empire, Hitler needed to re-establish the largest military force possible, and this army had to be all volunteer to at least reach a position equal to that of Imperial Germany period before World War I. Therefore, immediately after the Weimar Republic was overthrown, on March 16, 1935, Hitler announced a law on forced military conscription and established 36 divisions, while France only had 30 divisions. Landwehr-style conscription, which had been in place since the Prussian Empire, was also reintroduced on May 21, 1935. All Germans were responsible for military service according to the new law over 35 years old and under 45 years old. Soldiers who are battle-hardened and have combat experience will be given the opportunity to exchange guns and teach new recruits who have never been to the front lines. Due to the specific geographical conditions and potential, German officers and soldiers at all levels will have to take the offensive spirit as the main focus, because the attacker will have the right to choose the location and fighting method at their discretion. Even selected low-level non-commissioned officers must be imbued with this ideology, have a decisive action style, not be too dependent on superiors, and be able to make quick, limited decisions, avoid missing any chance of victory on the battlefield. High-ranking commanders must stay close to their soldiers, understand the battlefield situation, and be ready to sacrifice if necessary. With strict training selection requirements, priority is given to those who have spent time on actual battlefields. High-ranking Nazi leaders could quickly promote potential personnel or replace senior officers whenever necessary. When World War II broke out, the German infantry squad consisted of 10 people, including a squad leader equipped with a submachine gun, 6 K-98 riflemen, and 1 MiG-34 MiG-42 machine gunner. Later, the role of multi-purpose machine guns became more and more emphasized. In a platoon-level attack, they will have machine gunners take the lead role in attacking the target, and the remaining machine gunners will act as fire support. The riflemen and submachine guns will move as quickly as possible, occupy positions around the enemy according to the commander's orders, and then gradually narrow the scope of attack when they see that the soldiers are close to the enemy. The commander will order grenades to be thrown in and attack simultaneously, focusing on one point. When confronting a larger number of enemy troops, the machine gunner will act as the center of defense points, coordinating closely with each other. Clearly, the careful selection of personnel from low to high-level commanders capable of implementing extremely complex tactical requirements created a significant advantage for the German army in battles consecutively with opponents. But that wouldn't be enough if we didn't mention an overall strategy that has been associated with the name of the mighty Nazi army, which is it, Blitzkrieg. Frederick II once declared that our wars must be short and easy because we cannot afford a long struggle, since such a war would lower standards, our admirable discipline, the decline in our nation's population, and the depletion of our nation's resources. That was also the foundation for Germany's strategy throughout, from Prussia until the Nazis planned a war to redistribute the world. As mentioned before, the recovery of German industry allowed the army to be fully mechanized with many modern motor vehicles, aircraft, and weapons. This allowed Germany to carry out a mobile war with full mechanical power in a short time, leaving the enemy unable to react. At the beginning of the war, bombers and infantry will massively attack the entire enemy line, but only focus on strong attacks on a few weak points. The remaining points are only of diversion or harassment, moderately confused. After the concentrated attack point shows signs of being broken, the armored infantry units are arranged on a narrow front, will mobilize, quickly rush through the enemy's vulnerable points, and then conduct a deep penetration attack at the same time, open the way for artillery and infantry to enter. A part of the force, after wearing down the concentrated attack point, will have to immediately establish new defensive lines there to keep the flanks tight and prevent the enemy from re-establishing the defensive line. By this time, the enemy was completely shocked because so many defense points were breached and they could not determine which position needed the last priority for support. Armored and infantry forces will attack with all their might, isolating and destroying each group of enemy troops. The Air Force also launched support attacks deep into the front line until the enemy completely fell. In the early stages of the war, Blitzkrieg had a very positive effect when it was able to make Poland, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, France, and Greece fall one after another rapid advance of the Nazi army. In June 1941, Operation Barbarossa was launched. The Soviet Red Army from the beginning of the war also suffered terrible defeats, with casualties reaching several million soldiers. The Soviet Union was forced to the gates of Moscow. However, it seemed that the dictator— no, at this point, it must be called fascist boss Hitler, forgetting that the Soviet Union was a giant country with super-industrial complexes and endless resources, enough to supply factories with any raw necessary materials. In addition, the Soviet Union had vast land, enough to make more than 3 million troops enter here like a drop in the ocean. Furthermore, the Soviet Red Army was not only numerous, but also had a courageous fighting spirit. Together with solid defense lines around key positions, they kept the German army bogged down. At this point, Blitzkrieg revealed its weaknesses, making Germany unable to provide human and material resources for a giant army that was too far from the rear for too long a time. The country was also exhausted, leading to the complete collapse of the fascist regime. That was probably not because the German army had any weak aspects, but rather because of the fascist's delusional arrogance in his ambition to conquer the whole world. Meanwhile, the country's overall potential is too limited, but in the end, the success of Blitzkrieg in the early stages of World War II, as well as the way Hitler brainwashed people and built a powerful army, is still worth learning for modern historians, politicians, and military. Obviously, none of us wants such an army to appear right next to our homeland in the future.